What's up, Bengals fans? It is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast coming at you at a very special time on Wednesday. We've been kind of switching up the times on all of you live listeners a little bit. We apologize. We've had some special interviews, though, some other things come up, but happy to have you joining us live. I'm Anthony Cosenza, joined by John Sheeran and his buddy behind him, John. He's got a new shirt, or he changed shirts, did he not? What do we got behind us going on there?
Yeah, so Randall's just rocking the Joe Cigar shirt. You know, I felt like it was. I really had to wash the black shirt that's been on him recently. So yeah, he had to change shirts. You know, it's supposed to be spring, so it's supposed to be a nice change of pace, but it's freaking snowing in Cincinnati right now. So
yeah, what's up with that, man? I've seen some crazy pictures.
I was at the Reds game last night, and it said there was supposed to
really?
It was supposed to rain. You know, it was supposed to be like in the 30s or whatever, and all of a sudden it just starts sleeting. And I woke up and there's like at least an inch of snow on the ground. Freaking Toledo, where my girlfriend lives, like they got at least 3 or 4 inches of snow, and it's still coming down in some parts. So we're a week away from May, a week away from the draft, and we're re-entering winter, which is kind of rare here.
Well, stay warm and stay safe, man. That sounds a little treacherous. It's too cold for my blood, but to your point about the NFL draft, that is a week away. We've got a lot going on, a lot to cover. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about a couple of draft profiles. We're going to go over the uniform release, what we liked about it. John had an up close and personal experience with the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to let him talk all about that, share a lot of stuff with that. We've got a state your case. We've got all kinds of different things. And oh, by the way, next week we've got a special guest already lined up. Joe Goodberry, Bengals favorite, Twitter favorite, NFL draft favorite, will be joining us next Wednesday night as we look to kick off our NFL draft coverage that will be continuing all throughout the weekend, both on this program and on CincyJungle.com. Good to see all the live listeners. Good to be back talking some Bengals. And John, I'm going to give the floor to you because the uniforms were released, new stripes. You were there. You took pictures. You interviewed a lot of people. Tell us about the experience you had and that you wrote about on CincyJungle.com.
So what Anthony is referring to is that me and 6 diehard Bengals fans, some of you may know most of them, some of you may not, we got the chance to go to Paul Brown Stadium on Sunday, the day before the jersey reveal. And just going in chronological order here, this process started, I think, before Zach Taylor was hired. The Bengals starting the process of changing their uniforms, right? It started, I think, in late 2018, progressed through the 2019 season during Zach Taylor's first year, and then the uniforms, I think, were finalized sometime during the 2020 calendar year, right? So when the uniforms were leaked in March, there was a mixed reaction on Twitter, like, either I love it or I hate it, or if for the people on the negative side, like I hope they take this opportunity to make some adjustments based off of the feedback. Like that was way too late in the process for them to do anything, but it was still 6 weeks before they were ready to reveal them and obviously have them on sale. And I talked to Emily Parker just about that incident, and I said, did you contact the Falcons? Because the Falcons, a week before their reveal, they had their jerseys leaked as well. And she said, well, we couldn't really do that because we didn't have any of the inventory there for the, to sell to the fans. So we could have rushed Joe Burrow in a jersey and did some quick little hype video, but it still would have been weeks before people would have been able to get their hands on them. So all they could do is just, try to contact the NFL, see what they can do, contact anybody who had any information about what to do with the situation. And they found out that, the best course of action is just to stay the course, right? Just to acknowledge, but not acknowledge that the leak happened and just wait until April to actually do this thing. And they also looked to Twitter to see what the feedback was. And what they found through like a 12-hour extensive search with the help of Warehouse Collaborative, who helped them kind of do all the release content, they landed on 6 Twitter accounts that were promoting the jerseys in a positive fashion, saying these look good. I really like what they're doing here. These are going to look great on the players. And Emily and Elizabeth Blackburn, they took the opportunity to reach out to those 6 fans and invite them to Paul Brown Stadium on very ambiguous and mysterious purposes as well. So the 6 fans were Seth Reese. Some of you may know him. He's the Photoshop graphic designer guy who had photoshopped a bunch of players on the new jerseys before they were even released. Willie Lutz, a Columbus-based Bengals writer for LastWordOnSports.com and a very avid musician. Bengals Whitney on Twitter. She's been a longtime Bengals fan. I think she lives in Florida as well. Commissioner Yaz, we had her on the pregame show last season. She lives out in California, but she's obviously a beacon of positivity on Bengals social media. The Bengalorian himself, we all got to see who he is under the mask. It is Pedro Pascal, if you guys are wondering. Does not get helmet hair at all. And obviously, our very own Sim Hude, who is based on the East Coast. And they flew out 3 of those people who don't live in Cincinnati. No one really knew what we were there for, but we knew that the timing aligned for the jerseys. And I was down there requested by Emily to basically cover the whole thing from a media perspective and write about it. And as soon as they told us that we had to put our phones in these locked lockers and sign these non-disclosure agreements, we kind of already knew what was up. So we got to go on the field. We got to take pictures on the field, like throwing a football around. And then we actually got to meet Elizabeth Blackburn, who was just standing right outside of where they had the jerseys behind this curtain. And she just completely real. I think Mike Daniels said it in our last interview, it doesn't take you long to know if someone is real or fake or not. And Elizabeth Blackburn is the real deal in terms of just being a genuine, authentic fan of the team and someone who does want to engage and interact with this community and with this fan base. And she listened to all of our stories about how we became Bengals fans. And that's when everyone found out why they were there, because when the Bengals were panicking, entering panic mode, scrambling about what to do with this league, these were the people that kind of stood up to the process and said, I like what they're doing here, and this is going to be good. And it's unfortunate what happened, but this was a great move by them. And they wanted to reward that loyalty and that support for them. And that's when we all got to see the jerseys for the first time. It's when I said, you know what, screw my journalistic integrity. I'm going to put on the orange Joe Burrow jersey and post for some of these pictures. And that's some of the pictures that you saw on Cincy Jungle. So this happened a day before the jerseys were officially revealed on Monday, and we got to go down there for that and interact with media and such. So it was one of the most unique experiences I've had, not only as someone who has been around the Bengals for a long time, but also has covered them now for the better part of 5 years. And it was a very unique experience and a unique opportunity, and something that, 5-10 years ago, this would not have happened. Not them releasing jerseys, but interacting, engaging with the fans like this and showing support for their commitment and their support. It's something that I think does speak to this whole new stripes mentality that they're trying to push. But actions speak louder than words, and this action, it's something that it goes against what a lot of people's perception and preconceived notions are with the Bengals, and it really did make a statement in a positive way.
Here's some pictures from Zim Hude, also on the Cincy Jungle channel. All you guys hanging out, Bengalorian there in the middle of the throne. Really cool setup. Here's you, Zim, and is that Seth there with you in that picture there? Yeah. So really, really cool experience. I am jealous as hell that you were able to do that, both from a media perspective and a fan perspective. Very cool, though. Well represented in terms of the fan base and all of the all of the people that were represented there. Very, very cool. And I guess, there's been a lot of talk of, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, John, but there's been a lot of talk of, hey, things are changing. This has been a big off season. I was a little surprised to hear that this has been, that long of a development in terms of changing the uniforms, but it's all kind of come together in one off season in terms of the Ring of Honor, the uniforms. Obviously they got the high draft pick yet again this year. That should be pretty exciting. Your overall takeaway, I guess, you mentioned Elizabeth Blackburn, pretty, you felt great about her personality and the way the team's being handled. I don't know. I guess we've been experiencing a Bengals product that has been below average really since 2016, right? Did this experience, I know it may make you biased, but did this experience make you say, you know what, this team is actually headed for some good things ahead, even if it's just kind of doing something for the fans? Your overall impressions in terms of where the team's headed based on this experience?
So everything that has happened this offseason, it does coincide with the timing of Elizabeth integrating herself into this new role. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why we're seeing this all happen. I can't speak I can't say enough great things about Elizabeth. Now interacting with her in person and seeing that, palpable energy that she has in person. Like, she didn't, first of all, she didn't have to interact with us. She didn't have to be there. Like, her being there at all was a surprise to us. We were just there with Emily Parker and a couple of people from Warehouse Collaborative, who again really helped put all this stuff together. So seeing her actually, and her meeting us and getting to know us and interacting with us, that was just a plus on its own. And then throughout the rest of the day, she continued to hang out with us, shooting the breeze. There's a story I think that Yaz posted on Twitter with Zim about, like, Zim wanted to see the sweatshirt that Elizabeth was wearing. It was like, I guess knew he hadn't seen it before, and it wasn't in the pro shop or anything. And he said, he jokingly said, can I see that? Can I hold that or whatever? Can I try it on? And without hesitation, she starts taking the sweatshirt off. She had an undershirt on, so it wasn't like anything scandalous or anything, but she quite literally will give you the shirt off of her back. And that was like 30 seconds also after she caught a fly out of midair. But the whole Elizabeth, like, persona and just the aurora, like, around her, like, I think that is legit. And, uniforms, Ring of Honor, did they do anything in terms of actually improving the quality of the team? Remains to be seen. It's just nice little tokens, I guess, that fans in the community can hold on to and say, yeah, this franchise is progressing from that standpoint, and hopefully it'll translate to actual wins. But when you preach culture and change from the previous regime, and when you're actually putting those words into actions and actually seeing a transition from the previous regime, I think it does kind of mean something. And we talked about this when she put out her mission statement as well. But again, we had never met her before. We barely still even know a lot about her, even though she's been in a lot of Bengals media. But I think our experience, interactions with her, and seeing how genuine and authentic she is as a Bengals fan, as a person who obviously has an incredible influence within the organization, I think that's enough to say that things are indeed changing from that perspective. And, at a certain point, things are going to click. At certain points, luck is going to find them, because they are starting to do the right things. And that does have to mean something. And even if the results don't come immediately, you should know that things are changing, that they are trying a different approach.
Well, first of all, I want to say great job and echo a lot of the sentiments in the live chat here, for which I read the write-up. I saw what you posted on Twitter, and just excellent stuff, man. Truly, really, really cool stuff. I guess, to your point, I want to say that it seems, I wasn't there. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting her, but it again seems as if the Bengals have strategically placed Elizabeth Blackburn in this position to be a conduit to the fans for a very, very long time. This organization has kind of, they talk about loving their fans. They know they have a loyal fan base, but there was always this feeling that they kept their fans at an arm's length. And just with a lot of the strategies that they have initiated really over the last couple of seasons, the social media stuff, really making Elizabeth kind of a face of the franchise, being out there and interacting with a younger generation of fans that have big followings and are kind of faces of a rabid fan base. It's really neat to see her kind of be that conduit between the fans and the organization. And I could be wrong. I don't really follow the Atlanta Falcons too heavily. I don't follow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers very heavily, but this seemed like a very unique thing that this organization did in terms of bringing a group of fans in. You kind of called it a focus group last week when you and I chatted about it briefly, but it's kind of, when we see these uniforms being unveiled by other teams, it's kind of like, hey, here are the players, here's the uniforms, here's a photo shoot, here it is. This was like a behind the scenes, and then, hey, these fans were part of our unveiling of these uniforms. They were right there. They were taking pictures. You were there with, the usual media members, the beat writers and whatnot, all over there. And it just seemed like a very unique thing that not a lot of NFL teams that I have seen, standing back this way, they haven't really done that with their fan base, even if it's a smaller group of them. I thought that was very unique. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, though.
No, that was almost exactly what I was thinking. Like, when they did the reveal, like, and just the whole day prior to that. I don't know another franchise that involved their fans as much in this type of content and would be willing to recognize select fans who did have their back, did have their support. I talked to Elizabeth a little bit. I said, do you have a certain list on Twitter of accounts that you just look and just gather information on the fan base? And she said, no, my timeline at this point is pretty curated towards Bengals content, but like we see you guys out there, and we see the support and everything that you talk about. And when I asked her like how much of the fan influence was these new uniforms about, and she said it's the fans and the players that are the two catalysts into bringing all this, because obviously the players care about looking good on the field, look good, play good, I think is what Joe Mixon said. But the fans have been asking for this for years now, and with very specific modifications to the uniforms. Obviously, the lack of blockiness on them, the lack of the drop shadow, the implementation of the uniforms looking more like the color rush, like all of those like requests and that feedback that went into this multi-year process, and to just reward the fans for that and to give them that experience is something that I think is extremely unique throughout this league. And I wrote about this. This is how I closed the article. Like, the Bengals don't have the brand of the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Dallas Cowboys. They don't have the market size of the New York Jets and the Chicago Bears. They have to work with what they got, and what they have is this unique community that's filled with passion and pride of their team. And for them to leverage that and to finally recognize and use that to their benefit, it's a win-win for both the organization and the fans. They're kind of finally taking advantage of this undying support for a franchise that has had struggles in the last 30 years, and just now recognizing them and making them involved in the process now. It's only a good thing.
Well, kudos to you. I wanted, before we talk about some rule changes that just came down the pike on Wednesday through the league, we're going to briefly talk about that. We've got to state your case, and we've got a couple of prospect profiles still to get to, so a lot to get to in just a little bit here. I want to ask you your favorite up close. Which jerseys looked the best to you? Which ones did you prefer? I will say I thought the all black on Sam Hubbard looked pretty awesome. I thought even was it Ocho or was it Tyler Boyd? The orange jersey with the black pants was a pretty cool look. And then I thought really a unique look that I don't know how they're going to integrate this one, but the Joe Mixon one, the white jersey with the black pants, I thought that was really neat as well. What as you were there in person seeing these things, I have not been able to do that either. I probably will be ordering one at some point, but what grabbed you when you saw those things?
So seeing all 7 combinations in person on mannequins, like there was none like looked bad to me, which is obviously a good thing. Like, you have 7 combinations. I think all of them work uniquely to their own strengths and their aesthetic. I was surprised seeing the orange stripes on the white pants. I thought that was something I didn't really expect, but I think it does work well with the orange and black jerseys, because the orange jerseys have like the white numbers with the black outline. You can kind of see that consistency on the pants with their stripes, and obviously the black jerseys have orange stripes. So like there is consistency aesthetically, which I always value in uniforms. So I wasn't, in theory, the biggest fan of orange stripes on a white background, but I think it does work for the uniforms. And I did not expect the white and black pants to work with the black jersey, which is I think what T. Higgins was modeling, but that just works really well, and I think it's going to work well on the field. So there's none that look bad. They only all look good, and I find it difficult trying to rank them. But I've always been partial towards the orange jerseys, and now they finally just have black stripes that match the helmet. I just think that looks so clean to me, and I think with the creamsicle look, with the orange stripes going down, and also like the Halloween look, which I think Scott Bantle of Cincinnati Jungle likes to call them, I think that they look so improved compared to the last generation. Like the black on black, the white on white, they were going to look good based off of what they were going to do. But I was really interested to see how the orange jerseys would look, and I think they look much improved from the last generation, which is always good for me because I was always partial to those orange jerseys.
Yeah, they simplified things. I'm looking on the Bengals Pro Shop because our good friend and podcasting guru, Nick Superling, said, I'll pull up the comment here, which color jersey should I get? And also probably what We kind of talked about that. I mean, really, you can't really go wrong with much. Which player? I'm looking on the Pro Shop. I don't know if you can customize any yet. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And it looks as if Jesse Bates, you had mentioned that Jesse Bates will be available later. I always think it's a safe bet to get a player who's under contract for a few years. You got Tyler Boyd, you got Joe Mixon, you got Joe Burrow. I mean, those are guys, T. Higgins, those are guys that are ostensibly going to be sticking around for a while. So, I mean, those are safe bets. I would probably personally go Boyd or Higgins, I think. But what about you? What do you have a jersey that you're maybe thinking of? Did you take the Burrow one? I forget.
So I was able to get a Joe Burrow jersey on a discount, and I gave it to a family friend of ours who really got me into just the Bengals in general. So I felt like that was something that I felt I needed to do, because I wouldn't have been there in Paul Ward Stadium without that family and them bringing me up as someone involved with the Bengals. But I think there was a reason why they chose the players that they did to model them, like Sam Hubbard, Jesse Bates. They're playing in a contract year, even though they're going to, quote unquote, I mean, they're going to get extensions, right? Like, they know that they're core players and they're not going anywhere. But interesting though, because Jesse Bates, I think, tweeted out on Twitter that he might be thinking of a number change because of a new rule change that just happened.
Look at you, king of the segue. I absolutely love it. Well, we'll talk about these rule changes here. Hopefully, if you guys have jerseys, we'd love to see it, and we'd love to hear about it. But go get yours. I'm going to be getting some of my own here. Really, I think all of them look pretty good. And I put this out there. I think even casually dressing, I'm not a big jersey guy when I wear, I don't wear a jersey randomly out, but I think that these, because they simplified them and they look so clean and nice, I think you can kind of casually wear these a little more frequently than the last.
I feel a lot more like actual T-shirts. Putting them on, which that was always my complaint, because the NFL jerseys used to be like the most unwearable of all the professional sports like jerseys. But now these do feel like actual shirts, which I think is the definite plus.
Yeah, a little more stylish. Well, let's get to the NFL rule changes. Before we do, just once again, John, great job on covering that event. Go check out cincyjungle.com and the post that John put up there. A lot of pictures, a lot of quotes, a lot of cool things to break down the experience, and great job covering the event, John. And I'm glad you had a good time with a lot of people that we have come to know and love in Bengals Nation. So the rule changes, there's been a couple through the league here. One of which is you mentioned it, I guess we could start there, the jersey change. Do you want to talk about that one, and we'll start there?
Right. So the Kansas City Chiefs proposed a rule change allowing certain position groups to now have more number options. Specifically, it's not just quarterbacks and specialists who can be single-digit numbers anymore. Defensive backs, running backs, fullbacks, tight ends, and wide receivers can all be numbers 1 through 9. Actually, I think most of those players can now be 1 through 49. So you can have theoretically receivers wearing 32 or something like that, and tight ends wearing something in the 20s, which is very similar to what it is in college. But I don't know why it was never I don't know why this was really a rule in the first place. I think there was just more stricter guidelines with certain position groups having only a certain amount of jerseys. I think in college, your rosters are just bigger, so you just have to have that flexibility. But nowadays the NFL has 53 players on a roster and 10 or 12 players in the practice squad, so it's not that much of a difference in roster size. But there is just now more freedom for some of those more prominent players to feature numbers that they wore in college. I think Derrick Henry might go back to number 2 for the Titans. You have Tyreek Hill for the Chiefs, who might go back to number 1 or something like that. And now you have potential rookies, quote unquote, for the Bengals being in single digits. And also Jesse Bates, I believe he was number 3 at Wake Forest, and I think he tweeted out that he would like to change from 30 to 3. So before you get that Jesse Bates jersey, before you have your eyes on it, just watch out for that.
Yeah. I'm looking here at ESPN.com as well to a nice rundown of the some more rules here. The owners approved a relaxation of rules for the numbers that players of certain positions can wear, like you said, because of expanded practice squads. And then a 1-year experiment in an attempt to make it easier to recover onside kicks. In 2021, the receiving team on kickoffs will be limited to 9 players within 25 yards of the ball. Last season, NFL teams recovered only 3 of 67 onside kicks, the lowest total and recovery rate since at least 2001. And this was a proposal by the Philadelphia Eagles, in which they said that teams be given an option to gain 15 yards on one offensive play from their own 25-yard line to retain possession after the score. I think that this is just kind of a push by the league and by certain teams to kind of make games a little more exciting at the end, maybe, at a flurry of scoring, so that if a team kind of has those quote unquote garbage points, maybe they won't be so much garbage. There'll be a little more substance to them because of the onside kick change. I don't know, but that was an interesting one, I thought, as well.
Well, they had the rule change from a couple of years ago where eliminated players running up towards the kickoffs, and that and I think there was something else in terms of where the ball is kicked and how many players you can have within a certain amount of yards of the ball, but it basically negated the usefulness of onside kicks. It used to be a very exciting play in football there was always a chance, I guess, of something happening. But unless you have a situation like the Atlanta Falcons and they just forget the rules and don't pick up the ball, it was just hard for just teams to gain the recovery. So I guess this is a fine step forward. I would have liked to see them actually recognize the onside kick or eliminate the onside kick in general and just have that 4th and 15 type play, which I think it was the Chiefs who also proposed that from a year ago or maybe even this year, where instead of that onside kick, it's literally a 4th down play that if you obviously convert, you get to keep the ball. But anything that basically eliminates more kickoffs, I think is good for the sport in general.
There are, some that really don't. Eliminated overtime in preseason games. So this one's kind of interesting. Changed a rule that will now force a loss of down if 2 passes are completed behind the line of scrimmage. So I guess that if you're really trying to be real tricky there, they're clamping down on that. It sounds like. Interesting.
So I heard someone said the 2 passes, but I didn't know it was going to be restricting it. So that's actually interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Tabled a rule that would have expanded the area where players are prohibited from blocking below the waist. So that's still yet to be discussed down the road. Approved a rule change that ensures the enforcement of all accepted penalties during successive try attempts, defined as an opportunity for a team to score 1 or 2 additional points during one scrimmage down. Did not act on a spot or choose proposal from the Ravens for the winner of the overtime coin toss. In that scenario, the team would have the option to choose either which team will have the first possession of overtime or where the ball would be spotted. Interesting proposal there. Decided to include the taunting among its points of emphasis for 21. Clarified that the emphasis wouldn't be directed at celebrations, but toward acrimonious interaction among players. I guess, there's not too much to say there other than, if you remember, I felt last year against the Steelers, there was a pretty weak Mackenzie Alexander taunting call that was called. So I don't know if they're going to get real flag happy on that sort of instance, but something to note there. Anything else before we move on here? Anything else I'm missing, John?
I didn't even know that there was overtime in preseason games to begin with. That just sounds like a living hell. So kudos to them for getting rid of that. But also, I think that not only the Mackenzie Alexander high step, which is still a legendary moment in Bengals history, regardless of the flag or not. I think that was also that rule change was pointed towards. I think it was the Ravens who danced on the Titans logo after the Titans threw the game losing interception or something like that. And that was revenge for what the Titans did to them earlier in the year. I don't think that's going to stop people from doing it. They're going to take the fine. They're going to take the penalty if the game is out of hands. It's just something that the league can say, yeah, we don't want this part of the game, but when the opportunity is right, there's no way players aren't still going to do stuff like that.
And I wonder, to your point about, the dancing on, whatever that, logos out, Juju Smith-Schuster, even pregame stuff. I don't know if they're going to keep their eye on that. I know that's not in game, but I wonder if that's going to be monitored and be penalized. But interesting stuff. I mean, I know some of these things may be minor, but some interesting stuff, and some of which sounds like it's going to be on an experimental basis. So we'll kind of see how all of this works out. And but we wanted to get everybody apprised of some of the rule changes that literally came through Wednesday afternoon. So we wanted to get everybody on board with that. Before we get to our State Your Case, we would be remiss if we did not say it was presented by Symbol. And if you have not acted upon the great partnership that we have created with Symbol, I urge you to do so. I'm going to let John talk to you a little bit more about that great company and what they're doing for our listeners. But Symbol, we are appreciative of their partnership. John, tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so Symbol, if you guys don't already know, is the stock market for sports that allows you to trade sports teams just like stocks. And if it sounds that easy, I promise you that it is that easy. You go to their app, you go to their website, you have a whole market list of professional teams. They're currently set at a certain price, and depending on if the team does good or bad over a long-term timeline, that price either goes up or goes down. So you guys all know which teams are good, which teams are bad, and Symbol gives you a way to earn money off of that knowledge without the high fees and high losses of gambling. It's not gambling, it's more of investing, and you can use that knowledge to profit off of it. So you can use your sports knowledge to buy low, sell high, and earn cash payouts when your teams win. You can join the 2,000 plus early adopters who have already started to invest in their favorite teams, and you can do so by visiting www.symbol.app. That's www.simbull.app, and you can visit symbol.app/OPI to create a free account. And when you deposit, you can use the promo code OBI for a $10 deposit bonus. The Symbol Bengals, that stock price is currently in the $20 to $25 range. And after they draft someone in the first round, that price is probably going to go up. So you want to make sure that you buy low right now before that price goes up a little bit. And then keep an eye on it during the season. If the Bengals end up doing well during the season, that price is even going to go up. So you can profit off of the Bengals' potential success this year. And you can do so by visiting symbol.app/OBI. Enter the promo code OBI for a $10 deposit bonus.
Take advantage of that deposit bonus, because hopefully hopefully for those who have not, who have already invested in the Bengals, hopefully that price will be going up there with what the Bengals do in a week because of their draft class, and that their stock through the Symbol metrics will be going up there. But take advantage, get the free $10 by using the promo code OBI. Thanks, John. Appreciate you doing that. And with that, we are going to get to our State Your Case this week. It's going to be a weird one, but let's get to it. A lot of talk with the draft about the Bengals and Penei Sewell. And with that, I mean, I know there are a lot of people that are now in their camps, right? Team Chase, Team Sewell, good reasons for either. I created, I guess, a little bit of a stir today by a tweet I put out, and I don't know. Go check that out.
I know.
But I know. Did you like how I played innocent there? But look, and this isn't a good reason. I was kind of going down this train of thought a little bit earlier. This isn't a good reason necessarily for the Bengals to draft Penei Sewell at number 5, or maybe they're able to move back, get some picks, and grab him a couple of picks later. Who knows? I'd be interested next week to talk to Joe Goodberry, because I saw that he said something. If the Bengals don't take him at 5, it would be interesting to see if Penei Sewell gets somehow out of the top 10, because there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks taken within the top 5, top 10. You now have the Dolphins, who drafted Austin Jackson, I think it was last year. They just picked up DJ Fluker to bolster their offensive line. Does that mean they're out of the offensive line running? A lot of people think they're going to get a wide receiver with their top pick. Where are they? Number 6 right now? They're trying to move out of number 6. So interesting set of scenarios. I will say this, and this is what worries me if the Bengals do not take Penei Sewell. Again, not a good reason for the Bengals to take him, but this is what worries me if they pass on him. I think Penei Sewell is a great fit and could very well land somehow in the AFC North. Now, that sounds like a reach given where the Browns pick, given where the Ravens pick, given where the Steelers pick. But I think let's start with the player himself. I think just the athleticism, the nastiness, the size, the ability in pass pro, and the willingness in run blocking, I think that fits this division nicely. And I think that the one where I question in terms of the fit, the scheme fit, is Baltimore, because Oregon, especially with Herbert, kind of was a little bit more. I mean, they did some RPO stuff, but I mean, there's a lot of drop back passing and whatnot. Herbert is a bit of a different quarterback. He is mobile, he scrambles, but he's not a Lamar Jackson in terms of that kind of weapon with his legs. So that one I question a little bit. But look, they have questions on their offensive line. Ronnie Stanley's a great player, but he's had injury issues. And then you've got Orlando Brown, who now wants out. He either wants to play left tackle and get paid like one, or he wants out of Baltimore. So they have questions there. The Pittsburgh Steelers are potentially losing Alejandro Villanueva. I know he was visiting the Ravens. I don't know if there was a deal struck there, but they are losing him. They lost Matt Filer. They've got some issues on the offensive line, which sounds weird to say for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Cleveland Browns seem pretty set. They have a very good offensive line, but they like to run the football. They like to run play action, and it seems as if Sewell will be a good fit there. I guess my point is there are a lot of different AFC North options. They would have to give up quite a bit to move up to get a guy like Sewell based on where they currently are at. The Browns have 9 picks to play with this year. Ravens only have 6. And the Steelers have 7. But I go back, and I particularly worry about the Steelers and Sewell if Sewell somehow starts sniffing that outside of the number 10 range. If the Bengals pass on him and somehow he just keeps sliding, maybe someone grabs a Rashawn Slater instead of him. If you remember 2 years ago when the Bengals sat at number 11 overall and drafted Jonah Williams, the Steelers, who were at, I believe, number 20, which is somewhere around the range that they're at right now, they leapfrogged the Bengals to number 10, traded quite a bit of picks, including their second-round pick that year and I think a third-round pick the year after, to get up to number 10 and take Devin Bush, a guy that they knew that the Cincinnati Bengals probably wanted and liked a lot. There is a possibility, even with 7 picks, if they see a guy like Sewell, they are wanting to improve that offensive line. If they see a guy like Sewell go up and get towards that number 10, they could leapfrog and get up there and get a guy like that, even if it means sacrificing some picks. That worries me. I know it's not a good reason for the Bengals to draft a player like Sewell, but I have a very big fear that somehow he is going to be in the AFC North and he will be a monster that the Bengals will have to face twice a year.
So let's start with that then, because I know, like you mentioned, the Browns, but is there even an opening on an offensive line that he could actually take? You have Jedrick Wills, Joel Bitonio, J.C. Treader, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin. I'm not sure if Sewell would even – I'm not even sure if he would start on the offensive line. So I'm not entirely sure if the Browns would even be in play to trade up with him. The Ravens, I think that they would be interested if he was in an area where they could trade up because of that uncertainty with Orlando Brown. I don't think Sewell would have as much of a gripe playing right tackle whenever Ronnie Stanley gets back. Steelers, I agree, would be the team to worry about here. I don't think they really care about accumulating draft capital. They've obviously shown to be fine sacrificing it for elite talents, and I think there was a report that they were locked in on a few players, and 2 of them were offensive linemen. One of them including Tevin Jenkins and also Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama. So it seems like they are targeting an offensive player that would help them in the run game. So Pittsburgh would be the team to watch out for. But I want to go back to the other point. With those 3 teams, yes, I think Sewell fits what they like and what their identity is. And I guess that's 3/4 of the AFC North. So you could make the statement that Penei Sewell is perfect for the AFC North. But I'm not sure if that's even I don't want to say relevant, but I don't see any of those 3 teams competing with the Chiefs or the Bills. And I think those 3 teams are what you have to overcome to get to the Super Bowl. Those 2 teams are going to be running this conference for a long time. And I know the Browns get really close, but the Browns weren't able to beat the Chiefs, not necessarily because of their defense. They weren't able to just take advantage of scoring on the Chiefs. Like the Chiefs in that AFC divisional game, like they obviously had Mahomes getting injured, and they left the door open for the Browns to just outscore them, and they couldn't do it because they just didn't have the explosive offense to really do anything. They had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both healthy. They had an offensive line healthy, but all that physical football, it didn't really do much. It only scored 17 points against the Chiefs. So this division in itself, people like to look at it as the one goal to win the division, because that's what Marvin Lewis always touted when the Bengals were relevant in the mid 2000s and the 2010s. But I think I'm just trying to look bigger than that. I don't really care about fitting the mold of the AFC North. I'm trying to think bigger and trying to think about how am I going to beat the Chiefs, right? Like, obviously, a great offensive line can keep you competitive with those teams, as we just saw with Cleveland. And maybe that is what you need to eventually get to that point to solve the next issue. But while Penei Sewell would be perfect for those three teams, I think for what the Bengals want to be, a team that spreads it out and runs offense very similar to LSU, Penei Sewell will be nice, but he's not necessary. He's not necessary to win this division. You can try to win the division the old-fashioned way, which is what they did in 2009 when they just ran Cedric Benson into the dirt behind that offensive line. But I think with where they're set up right now, with the personnel they have, they can fast-track it another way, in a more advanced way, but also a way that can keep them competitive against the Bills and against the Chiefs. And I think to really reference the Avengers here, that's the end game, right? Like getting out of the division is one thing, but getting out of the AFC entirely, that's a whole other thing. That should be realistically the goal with this regime. Like, winning the division's nice and competing with the division's nice, but competing for Super Bowls, that's a whole other thing. And I think that takes more than just bolstering an offensive line and running the ball.
I agree with you. I guess I just look at it a little bit as, if you're going to get through the AFC, you inevitably, even if it's, getting past Kansas City in that AFC Championship game every year, you are inevitably in your path going to need to get past a Baltimore and or a Pittsburgh, maybe even now Cleveland, based on how they have their teams built. You're going to need to get past those teams. And, traditionally, Baltimore and Pittsburgh usually have very good offensive lines. That's how they build their football teams. I guess I have seen just, a lot of Bengals football, and especially lately, it gets tiresome to see their offensive line perform the way it has. This saying Sewell is potentially good for these other teams isn't a rally cry or even a good reason for the Bengals to draft him at number 5 per se. And maybe that isn't a relevant discussion. It was just something that kind of came to mind. But I will say this, that what is relevant is, the Bengals have unfortunately been in the position where they've had to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, in terms of the AFC North. They have to kind of play a chess game with what these teams do in the draft and free agency. And if the Bengals do decide to take Jamar Chase, bypass Penei Sewell, Sewell goes to a Baltimore, a Cleveland, a Pittsburgh, they're going to need to do more on the defensive front and off the edge to potentially battle that, because if Sewell becomes who we all think he very well could be, that's going to be a problem for the Bengals going forward if they have to face him twice a year.
I think you just nailed the head on this discussion, right? The Bengals can play chess with the rest of the teams in the division. They can try to catch up, because unfortunately that's what they've had to do for the past 3 years, right? There's no question that the 3 other teams have already passed them or have remained past them for several years now, and the Bengals can try to catch up to get on their level, or they can try to play checkers and try to win in a different way. And obviously that still requires a decent offensive line to do whatever they want to do. But it really does come down to that philosophical discussion. Do you want to win like the rest of the AFC North and try to win at their game, or do you want to try to win at a different game, a game that those teams are ready to combat? And that's obviously risky, because you're not sure if it's going to work, especially in this division, to get out of this division. But if it does work, it could be something that's completely unstoppable, and not even their offensive lines and their defense can be able to counter it.
Well, we'll see what happens with the NFL draft and what happens with Penei Sewell. maybe this is all a moot point and he doesn't end up being the player that we think that he's going to be. Maybe he ends up in the small percentage that it seems now with the Cincinnati Bengals, and Jamar Chase does not. But I think I just had this sneaking suspicion over the past day or so that I said, if the Bengals bypass taking Penei Sewell, I could potentially see with some degree of likelihood a Pittsburgh, a Baltimore moving up, sacrificing some capital to get a guy to bolster their offensive lines and continue to build their identity that way, which they traditionally have done. So we'll see what happens. Definitely a player to keep an eye on, but good chat this week in terms of the State Your Case. Thanks, John. We're going to get to some prospect profiles, but that was this week's State Your Case. Before we get to a prospect profile, we have two on tap, but I think we may save one just for the sake of time, depending here. We'll see, and I'm going to let my partner go first. Just want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel, whether it's Our Show You Dig, Orange is the New Black, Matt Minnick's Chalk Talk, hopefully all of the above. Subscribe, leave a review. That helps us out. We appreciate all the support. We've continued to see some growth again this year as a podcast channel, and for this specific show. You can get it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Megaphone, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the major audio platforms. You can always subscribe to our YouTube channel, get some content that not only has our live shows and all that kind of stuff, but other extra content that we put up there. So check that out. We appreciate all the support.
So this is the first time I've done a draft profile in a couple weeks, and Last week, I did a State Your Case about, the Bengals potentially being interested in more smaller school guys without, the illustrious pedigree. I'm doing a 180 this week. I'm not saying to just ignore what I said last week, but I want to go back to, what we can more expect the Bengals to do based off of their past one. Now I'm going to highlight Ohio State offensive lineman Wyatt Davis, and he just screams Bengal to me. For the obvious reasons, background. He was a consensus 5-star recruit out of California. I think he was the top guard coming out of that 2017 class that had Jeff Okudah, Chase Young, who also went to Ohio State. So he was being touted, I think, by Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama. They were all recruiting him. I think Urban Meyer kind of swept in at the end to basically say, come join the Buckeyes, and that's exactly what he did. So he was more of I think he was a bench player in his freshman year in 2018. I think he started 2 games that season. So it was 2019, his true sophomore year. That was the first year that he did start, and that really did put him on the map, on the NFL radar. I think PFF had him one of the highest graded offensive linemen in 2019, which is also when Penei Sewell took college football by storm that season, and that's where we saw the best of Wyatt Davis. And then last year in 2020, when no one was sure if the Big Ten was even going to play football, unfortunately, it wasn't the greatest year for Wyatt Davis, because not only was the whole season kind of a mess, Ohio State barely even played 6 games that season, he also dealt with COVID himself, and I think that did make an impact on how he finished the season. So he didn't exactly look like the 5-star player that he was coming out of high school. He didn't look like the true sophomore starter that really earned that All-American status. So he didn't play at his best in 2020, and unfortunately, he did end the season suffering what looked like a scary knee injury against Alabama in the national championship. But at his pro day, he did not work out, but he said that he was doing fine, and he's 100% ready to go for whenever NFL camp starts. So there is no issue. There's no Billy Price type of thing with this where he's potentially going to miss time. And I think that's also a name that people are going to come to. Are the Bengals really going to take another offensive lineman from Ohio State high in the draft? Is that something that they should avoid? That's unfortunately another case of helmet scouting. Wyatt Davis is not anything like Billy Price for a lot of reasons, and I'll just get to just the 4 that I think you can want to highlight with Wyatt Davis, what he does well. He gets out of his stance extremely quickly with no wasted movement. This guy is a natural athlete. We did not get to see him test, but in terms of just fitting in seamlessly in a zone blocking scheme as a guy who can just reach nose tackles and defensive tackles, just a couple gaps away, he can absolutely do that. He's not an insane athlete, and I don't think he would have tested like an insane athlete, but there is no wasted movement getting out of the sets. And I think that's going to be important for a Frank Pollock wide zone scheme. He stays low and he rolls his hips through contact. And that's when he does engage in those zone blocks. He plays with great leverage. And by rolling his hips, he's able to redistribute some of that power on the contact onto the opposing player. And he finishes guys. Like he takes guys to the dirt. So to have that athleticism and that scheme versatility, but also having that nastiness, that's obviously a plus for an offensive line coach like Frank Pollock. And in pass protection, he's one of the most proficient and technically advanced 22-year-olds that you will see coming into the NFL, because he has the ability to use independent hands. And what independent hands are is, some guys, I think Liam Eichenberg and Notre Dame guys, they always have these two-handed punches, and that's just what they teach. And it's powerful, but it can also lead you to trouble because guys can easily counter that. Having independent hands means that you can have your hands at multiple strike points, and you're able to counter edge rushers really quickly. You're able to use your hands independently, so you can use your right hand high, your left hand low, and you're able to use whatever leverage you have in pass protection to keep guys at bay. So he already has a great understanding of using his hands in pass protection. I guess if you want to talk about weaknesses with Wyatt, there was issues in identifying stunts and twists in pass protection. He did end up getting on the ground a couple times with some miscommunications, but that was also just his second year starting, and he's still a really young player. But entering the 2020 season, he was projected to be a first-round pick, and unfortunately, everything that happened in 2020, I think Matt Miller of the DraftScout.com said that there's possibility that he could potentially slide into the fourth round of this draft, just because he dealt with COVID. He didn't put up the best tape in 2020, and he's coming off of an injury now. So I don't know if he lasts that long, but I think if there is enough talk with that, there's a definite possibility that he can slide into round 3. And I think if the Bengals are sitting there, regardless of what they did in the first 2 rounds, if they're staring in the face a 2-year starter at right guard who is already incredibly proficient in his technique and has the athleticism, has the experience to do the concepts that they want, I think Wyatt Davis can come in immediately and start at their most important position of need on the offensive line. He has the pedigree. He has talk about bloodlines. His grandfather was Willie Davis, who was a Hall of Fame NFL player in the 1960s. Both his dad and his brother played at the college level. So he's been bred for this since day one, since he's been alive. I think they're going to really like his background. Obviously, he played, an hour and a half northeast of Cincinnati and Ohio State. I think they're going to like his ability to come in immediately and play at the position that they need the most, to have that background, to have that 5-star pedigree, to be able to find him in the 3rd round. I think it's going to be hard for them to pass that up.
Well, I don't want to sound like a dummy and just pretend like I've watched a lot of this kid. Unfortunately, I have not. But a lot of the things that you are saying are some of are resonating with me, because those are echoing some sentiments I have seen before. I guess I want to use this opportunity to kind of ask you some questions and maybe put you on the spot about this kid, if you don't mind, John. And I think when you say interior offensive lineman, Ohio State, a lot of talent, and you're talking Cincinnati Bengals, immediately the conversation shifts to, well, what about Michael Jordan and Billy Price, and why is this guy different? Similar schemes, obviously, because we're talking about real recent history with those other 2 names. So I guess, for the Bengal fan out there, and I know a lot of Bengals fans are Ohio State fans, I guess for the Bengal fans out there that have seen the struggles from both Michael Jordan and Billy Price that had high hopes there, and, you're talking about Wyatt Davis, an inconsistent 2020. What makes him different and or more promising for the Cincinnati Bengals than those 2 just offhand?
Well, again, like if he went to Notre Dame or Alabama, who were both in the process of recruiting him, I think there might be a different perception about him. He comes from a program that is more accustomed to producing quality NFL offensive linemen, but he chose to go to Ohio State, and him going to Ohio State did not make him a classic traditional Ohio State offensive lineman who ended up being extremely overhyped. Like Wyatt Davis is by far, just looking at him and him alone and independently, he's by far a better player than Billy Price or Michael Jordan ever were at Ohio State. And now, Wyatt never played center, so he never got in the conversation for the Remington Award, which is, I think, what Billy Price won. And I don't even know if Michael Jordan won, but maybe he was in consideration as well. But that was never really a thing for him. Billy Price, was a high school defensive tackle, a really scrappy dude who didn't have size and length on his side, and he just had to work with what he had. And he always had those limitations that would eventually catch up to him in the NFL. Like Wyatt Davis is 34 inch arms. I think 33 and like 7/8 is the official designation there. 6'4", 315. So he's not, skinny and lanky and tall like Michael Jordan. Jordan has tremendous issues with just playing with proper pad level and getting under pads and playing with leverage. That's not an issue with Wyatt Davis. I think Pro Football Focus declared that his top strength is balance, which is obviously the opposite of Billy Price. And I think they compared him to Kevin Zeitler, which in terms of just being a right guard, like there's nothing more that you could want for, at least, especially from the Bengals perspective. They already know who Kevin Zeitler is. So if they're able to draft a player who projects like Kevin Zeitler in the third round, that's already so much better than taking Billy Price in the first round, and even taking Michael Jordan as a flyer in the fourth round. Like Michael Jordan was never supposed to start in his rookie season, and I think that unfortunately did not do him any favors and put him more or less where he is today. Wyatt Davis was a more talented player coming into Ohio State as a 5-star recruit, as the best guard out of that class, and the guy who has the body type and the size, the strength and athleticism to actually be a quality NFL player.
Does he start right away for the Bengals, you think? If that's the pick, let's say for instance they get, let's say for the sake of argument, he is their first Wyatt Davis is the first offensive lineman that the Bengals take in this year's draft. Do you think that makes him an automatic starter at the right guard position day one, or do you think they'll kind of slowly move him along based on kind of what you talked about with the struggles with the other two, namely Mike Jordan being thrown into the mix right away as a starter?
I think if he's the first offensive lineman that they take, he would almost be taken in the second round, right? And if they take him in the second round, absolutely he would start. But if they wait until the third round to take an offensive lineman, it's Wyatt Davis, then there would still be that confidence that you believe that they would have in him, that he would be the starter, if not the front runner to start, right? So like ideally, Wyatt Davis is maybe the second offensive lineman that they take if he lasts into the third and fourth round, which is apparently a very real possibility. Like no one really knew what this guy's draft stock was after that injury. Like he was, loosely touted as a first round player because of that 2019 season, and I think that hype has kind of died down because teams really value the most recent tape that you have, and if you don't put up your best performance as you enter the NFL, there's going to be some questions about, this guy regressed. Is he going to continue to regress into the NFL? But if you pair him up with a quality offensive line coach and a scheme that benefits him, I think you can project him to be the good player that he was when he was in college. So if they take him in the second or third round as the first offensive lineman to take, I would say that he's the safe bet to start at right guard.
Okay. Chances you think the Bengals go that route, the Wyatt Davis route? Do you think they shy away based on their couple of issues with Ohio State offensive linemen? Do you think they say, I don't really care about that? I mean, this kid can play. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this kid's kind of high up on their draft board? Just your own intuition there, or do you think they're looking maybe elsewhere?
Well, I bet they're gonna value like the opinion of Mike Jordan, who played with him in 2018. So they have that kind of in terms of getting to know him on the personal side. But if there is this talk about, the NFL might not be as high on him as certain media is, I don't think that they would take him at the top of the second round. I think if he would have tested and there would be more confidence in what he did last year, then yeah, I think he would be a second round target. But I think when the third round comes around, regardless of what they do in the first two rounds, like you can make a safe bet that they're going to double dip at offensive line, especially if they don't take one in the first round. So if they go offensive line at 38 and then they swing back around at 69, it could be very possible that Wyatt Davis is their best player available. And if they don't take him there and he's still there in the fourth round, you could like basically put that in Sharpie that they would absolutely consider him there.
Well, good stuff, John. I just kind of hit cruise control and let you do your smart guy thing. I appreciate all the insight on Wyatt Davis, an interior offensive lineman, namely right guard out of Ohio State, for this week's prospect profile. We had another one on tap, but we're going long, so we will save that either for next week or maybe a special little video there. We're going to kind of get to a couple more as the draft is so close, but good stuff. Wyatt Davis undoubtedly is going to be one of the names talked about inside and outside of Paul Brown Stadium walls. Let's drop the mic and get out of here. We're about an hour in, John. This thing flew by, but what do you got for us before we hop on out of here?
I have nothing really of importance to say. I know that this is like Our whole schedules have been kind of a little out of sorts this month, but that's really what the offseason is. You just got to be flexible with some of these things. You got people interviewing, and you're always going to take that opportunity. But just like, if you get called down to Paul Brown Stadium for something very ambiguous, what the hell? I'm going to be the only reporter there. This is going to be great. So, it's been another kind of interesting offseason as we're still dealing with COVID, but it's been nice that the Bengals have been very unique in their history in giving us unique opportunities. But I'm going to pick up the mic and give it to you so you can drop it.
Well, again, I just want to say good stuff from you covering the event, dude. That was really, really neat, and I'm glad you were able to be a part of that. I don't have much else. I'm just going to wish my sister a happy birthday. Today is her birthday, so happy birthday, Lisa. John, thanks for everything, man. You carried us this week, as you usually do. Every week you carry us, buddy. Thanks for everything, and thanks everybody for tuning in, whether you joined us live, if you weren't able to join us live because of the time change or what have you. Get the show on one of the platforms. We appreciate all the support. We saw a question before we get out of here. We saw one question about what we're going to be doing next week for draft. We're going to be having a Wednesday show. We think we're going to be doing a live stream of the draft up until the Bengals pick at number 5 or something like that. We're still kind of hashing that out. And then I know ourselves and the other guys in terms of the podcast channel, we'll be doing all kinds of different stuff as well. So keep it to the channel, keep it to cincyjungle.com. We're going to get out of here. Thanks, everybody. Take it easy.